you're going to basically learn how to use the Wacom pad to create weighted strokes. Um, as with anything with drawing, uh, just doing the simple basic things to begin with is where you need to start. So basically what we need to do is create a new canvas. Go to new. Let's create a title for this or a name for weighted stroke practice. And it's already 9 inches wide by 12 inches tall. Make sure it's inches and not pixels or anything else. Make sure it's inches. And let's make this a resolution of 300. Okay. So mine already said 9 by 12 and 300 because I'd already done this once before. So that was the previous canvas I had created. So that's what it opened up as to be created as now. So I didn't have to do anything. So just make sure your width is 9 inches, height 12 inches, resolution 300, title it Weighted Stroke Practice, and you're good to go. All right. So you should have by now gotten you a Wacom pad, hooked it up, and it was hopefully working for you. So I'm going to switch over from my trackpad to my stylus on my Wacom pad. Okay. Now to get this going, I do need to make sure that I have black selected. Okay. I do have that. Actually, I can use my trackpad for this for now to get things set up and going. I do need to select my brush. I need to make sure my brush is a hard edge brush, not a soft edge brush. And whenever I select that, usually you can press return and that will go away. All right, I need to make sure my opacity is 100. Okay, now we need to go to window, yes, window, and then go to brush. All right, so when you do brush, when you go to window brush, this pops up, this new panel. Now, as you can see here, this is the type of line we would get with that brush. As you can see, it's not tapered. It's just one even thickness, okay? So that is not a weighted stroke. It's kind of uniform and it's fairly flat and basically two-dimensional. It does have a lot of dimension to it, okay? It doesn't really take advantage of the whole pen pressure. So how do we get the pen pressure? So we need to set that up, okay? First of all, we need to come up here and click on Shape Dynamics. You can see it's highlighted, but we need to make sure it's got a check mark. Okay, so now all of a sudden you can see all this appear, and then now look at our line. Our line is now tapered at the ends. This is more calligraphic. Think of calligraphy, where things get thick and thin. And the way we can do that is by the pen pressure we apply as we're making our marks. Okay, so uh, the less we press, the lighter the touch, the thinner and more tapered the line. The harder we press, the thicker the line's going to get. Okay. So smoothing, I'm not sure smoothing is checked when you open yours up. Sometimes maybe different students will look different than mine. Kind of surprised to see smoothing is already checked. So just make sure that smoothing is checked. Okay, make sure that's checked. All right. So up here, you're going to see pen pressure here. You're going to see off here. You're going to see pen pressure here. And again, a lot of this is because I've already used this before. And so yours may not show pen pressure. Yours may say off. If yours says off, even though it says Shape Dynamics right here, your line is still not as tapered as it could be. So we need to make sure that this is on pen pressure. Also, I would make sure this is on pen pressure. Okay. So notice there's nothing as far as these little sliders go, as far as where they're at. Okay, if I slide this over, do notice what occurs. Our line down here starts to look kind of jagged and bumpy and rough. We don't want any of that, so let's slide that back over here. Now notice this line is kind of thin. Part of that's probably because our brush is kind of a small brush, okay? If you recall, we can always make our brush. I'm going to put my cursor out here so now that it's like the brush. The little L brackets that are above the return key on the keyboard, the right-handed key bracket will increase the size of your brush. So notice as I increase the size of my brush, my little icon down here for my brush increases as well. If I press on the left key and decrease that, this should decrease too, although my computer is being very laggy right now. All right, so let's look at control here. Your control may be off, and if that's the case, let's make that pen pressure. And I've noticed that kind of tapers things a little bit more, so I want that to be pen pressure. And if yours is down low, like, very low, maybe even 0, let's bring that up. And I've had mine recently as high as 60. And try that, okay? That's as far as much as I know about this. You can go in and play with all this stuff, but for right now, let's just say we set this up exactly as I said. All these sliders to the left, pen pressure here, this on 60, okay? Smoothing checked, shape dynamics checked. Make sure our brush is a hard edge brush. I'm not going to click there. If I do, I may lose everything I do here, and I'll show you what happens. I click here, look what happens. I'm going to hit the return key, get that out of the way. It kind of undoes kind of things. This kind of put things back to a non-weighted stroke brush. So if I come over here and click Shape Dynamics, everything gets back to where it was, okay? Now, if I want to minimize this, obviously this is out in our workspace. We don't need this here. We're going to minimize this by clicking these arrow keys here. And this is the tab. You can see it says brush. It's more or less a tool. Just like this. These are tools, right? We have one over here. It's kind of collapsed, and we can bring that back out by clicking it. And by clicking again, it will close it. Okay. All right, so what are we going to do? I want us to do some practice marks on here where we just do straight lines, vertical lines, horizontal lines, maybe some spirals one way, spirals another way, and then some hatching and cross hatching. Okay, so this is where you need to make sure and grab your stylus. I've been using my trackpad. All right, so make sure my brush is selected. Now, I would kind of zoom in on this a little bit, maybe not that much. Okay, and I'm going to decrease the brush size using the left bracket to about something like that. All right, so first off, we're going to start by doing some kind of light kind of lines, kind of thin light lines. That's what I mean by this, not light, but thin. So being thin is going to make it kind of light. So I'm going to barely press with the pen or the stylus onto the Wacom pad and make maybe about 3 vertical lines. Okay. Now, that wasn't long enough, so I need to undo that. I'm going to do Command Z. Okay. Now, I press Command Z on my keyboard and it worked, but sometimes it doesn't. And I have to touch my trackpad to get it to work. You'll run into this situation eventually, and you'll know what I'm talking about. So anyway, So I'm going to try a light vertical. I'm kind of pressing kind of hard. Let's go as thin as possible on this. Again, I don't know why my computer's being so laggy right now. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Zoom back out. Okay. Now we're going to do some kind of medium weighted lines. So I'm going to go kind of medium thickness. Now you're going to find you get much better results in terms of jitter or kind of a messiness in your line if you start trying to learn to go a little faster. You have to get a little more confident in order for that to happen. A lot of times I've seen students who are really good at this. They undo, redo, undo. They'll draw, undo that, draw it again, undo that, and draw it again until they get just the way they want it. So let's go with a heavy weighted line. Okay, we need to leave room over here because we're getting ready to do some different stuff. So I don't want to spend a lot of time doing these. So I'm going to go with a heavy. So doing heavy, I'm going to press down really hard. Not so hard I'm going to break anything, but I want to get a thick line. Okay, so I have thin, medium, and thick. And my thin could be a little thinner. Maybe that could be a little more medium, but that is definitely thick. All right, so now I'm going to try to go from thin to thick. All right, didn't do so bad, but especially I like that one pretty good. The other ones, nah, that one not so good. Small practice. Now we're going to go from thick to thin. This one's a little harder to do, so I'm going to go thick, then kind of thin. Actually, that one turned out really good. Maybe it's easier to go thick to thin. Okay, so that's that. Okay, you can really see the weighted stroke in terms of just using the one brush size. We're using this one brush and that one size. Right now it's on 50. And I'm able to get these varying thicknesses depending on the whacking pad and how I press. So now I'm going to come over here and try to do some horizontals. All right, so I'm going to reposition myself a little bit, I think, so I can maybe do this. It might work a little easier for me. You have to kind of figure out as far as where you place your whacking pad and in order to get the best marks possible. So now I'm going to go really thin and go horizontal. Okay, that was pretty good. Now I'm going to go medium. Now I'm going to go press hard and go thick on this. Okay. Now I'm going to go from thin to thick. Now I'm going to go from thick to thin. All right. So there we go. vertical, horizontal, thin, medium, thick, thin to thick, thick to thin. So somewhere in that, hopefully you kind of find some comfort zone in terms of when you're going from either from thin to thick. So just depending on whatever it is you're drawing, you might be in a situation where you have to do, thin to thick or thick to thin or anything. So of course we're going to have curves involved and diagonals and all that too. Okay. All right. So now we're going to practice some spirals, something kind of curved. If I can get this to go up. So I can't get this to go up right now, so I'm going to have to press, use my trackpad and kind of press on my picture. Oh, my computer again has been very laggy. Oh, goodness. I'm not doing this. It's like I kind of made those actions and then those actions took place. And so my computer is really laggy right now. Okay. So I just want to move that up out of the way so we can have space to work right here. Okay. All right. So let's do some spirals through here. Okay. All right. So let's practice starting in kind of a counterclockwise motion. So I'm going to go from thin to thick. Got room, I'll put more over here. All right. So let's now go from thick to thin. Looks like a G. All right. So let's go in a clockwise motion from thin to thick. I seem to have more control making something really thin by doing it this way. Now we'll go from thick to thin. Okay. So there's some curves. All right. So let's do kind of a wavy line, something that kind of goes up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. When I do this, I'm going to kind of really just sort of have a continuous line, but I'm going to go either really light, really thin, or really heavy and really thick. And then I'm going to see if I can go as light as possible and kind of keep this in motion. The line might even break up, but it'll make an interesting look. So I'll demonstrate. So I'm going to start in here very thin, come up, go thick, then go thin again, then go thick, then go thin again, just almost barely touching, go thick, go thin, go thick. Okay, I'm running out. I'm going to stop and kind of reposition my hand. All right. Okay. All right. So I want to practice some hatching. Okay. All right, we got a lot of space left here. Um, so hatching is essentially just sort of um, kind of little quick repetitious strokes, kind of side by side. The closer they are together, the darker it's going to be. The further apart, the lighter it's going to be. Um, and I want to do some that are kind of thin. I want to do some kind of medium and some kind of thick. Okay, so let me get my everything positioned in the right place here. All right, so I'm going to go very thin and kind of spread them apart to make it very light, and going diagonal and making kind of these quick little gestural kind of marks. Now I want to do a little cross hatching where I just kind of go diagonally in this direction. Again, my computer has been very laggy. Then you see how it gets dark on us. So now I'm going to go medium white. So I didn't mean for that to happen, but you're supposed to erase, but still caught it. So I want to, okay, that's medium white. So I'm going to go thick. Go thick this way. I don't know what's going on with my computer here. All right, so that's thin to thick. Now let's kind of do kind of some thin and thick. So I'm going to go thin at first. Then go medium. Then go thick. All right, then crosshatch thin. Then crosshatch medium. Then crosshatch thick. Okay. So maybe it's because I have my image so big that my computer is being so laggy. I wonder if, see, I can't even get this to work right. Image size. I may change my image size because my computer's been so laggy. I'm just going to make this 72. I don't know if that's going to make a difference. I'm going to do that for right now with my computer. And that does seem to improve things. It's like sort of I move things, it's kind of real time now. All right, so I'm going to need to change my brush size, make my brush size bigger just by decreasing the size of the image. So I'm going to hit my left bracket to decrease my brush size now. All right, so we can actually kind of hatch kind of curved. And my computer is still being laggy. I wish that was more real time so I could see what's happening. So I could base my previous mark on my next mark based on my previous mark, but I can't do that right now. All right. So I'm kind of running out of ideas here. If you want to just sort of practice right here, just some kind of mark making, um, could even be some kind of continuous line kind of doodle kind of stuff. I found the quicker you kind of do things, the nicer mark you get. If you kind of go very slow, kind of like this, that's how that mark has all this kind of jitter in it. But if you can kind of figure out how you can make a very fast mark, it looks more fluid and it looks more confident, right? Versus if I try to do something very carefully and very intentional, okay? So after a while, you get much better results and more confidence the more you do this, okay? All right, so you're going to save this and you're going to turn this in. We'll zoom out just to see our results. If I can zoom out, and there we go. So we just save that and turn that in.